this episode, we are looking specifically at the human element, and we'll come on to what that means a bit later on. But we are thrilled that you're joining us this morning. Just a reminder that as the discussion happens this morning, we do have a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can put questions or comments or thoughts, anything you like, into that box at any time in the episode, and we will be taking on those questions later on and throughout the discussion. So if you have any comment you want to make on something that has been said, or you want to challenge something, please do put those questions in the box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll come on to those later on. But first, I'd love to introduce Louisa, who is our editorial executive, and she is going to be hosting part of the episode this morning. Louisa, over to you.
Thanks so much, Shama. So today we're going to be speaking to Daniela. Daniela Perry is the founder and CEO of Yoppie. She grew up in Stockholm, Sweden. Daniela has a background in organizational development, operations, and marketing and communications, having always been driven by organizational development with a strong commercial mindset. She has previous experience at Intercorp Group, Tenzing, and Bell Shoes, and studied business and marketing at Uppsala University, Sweden, and communications at Berg School. Daniela was named top female entrepreneur in Europe for Unbound London on July 17th, and her company Yoppie is a healthcare technology company with a mission to put women's health into women's hands, starting with toxic-free feminine care. It's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for joining, Daniela.
Thank you so much for having me.
So as Shama said, as we discuss the human element today, I encourage you to put any questions you may have for Daniela into the Q&A box, which we will come to later on. So let's start. Purpose versus profit is the name of this series, and I think that your organization, Yoppie, captures that really, really well. So what does that phrase mean to you and your business, Daniela?
So purpose versus profit means that the business no longer only have responsibility for the bottom line. Profit is always going to be very important, because in order to have, when you have profit, you can create a sustainable business, you can continue supporting the employees and continue to invest back into the business to reach more people with your message. But ultimately, I believe businesses have a responsibility to their consumers and their overall community today to represent them and drive real change in the world on their behalf. So taking action to make a change takes courage, but it's easy. And whether it's regarding social justice issue or environmental issues or something else, is something that everyone can do, but it's the business that stands to make the biggest changes, I believe. And this is because businesses have more reach. We could have a louder voice, and we can make a bigger impact. And we can make that by, reviewing our supply chain around the world, and how we, manufacture products, how we package them. And I think coming back to your question, so when you're driven by profits, you will never have enough, I think. But when you're driven by a purpose, you can actually go to bed at night knowing that you're doing what you can do every single day for something that is actually bigger than yourself.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess kind of going back to what Shama said at the beginning with the sustainable development goals, how do you think that Yoppie kind of fits into those, and specifically goals numbers 3 and 5 about good health and well-being and gender equality?
So we're building a platform for the long term. So we're thinking long term, and as a business that could, we want to last and attract people all ages at the same time to fit perfectly with the cultural needs that are out there. So to me, it was like a no-brainer that well-being and gender equality, which is the goal 3 and 5, would be the center of our mission. And making a difference in these areas was also one of the reasons I started the brand. And our product specifically is very consumer driven. People who menstruate, which we have seen is a very, very impact on gender equality. If women or people who menstruate doesn't have access to, products, facilities for menstrual hygiene, they actually end up not going to school, and they lack their possibility to get themselves educated, which is really, really important, especially in developing countries. And coming back to my journey, it was clear to me that we, as women, didn't have enough options when it came to high quality menstrual products that allow you to take care of yourself, your body, but also the environment, which then impacts your overall health and well-being too. So when I started Yoppie, most of what I could find out there was made of harsh materials, potential toxic ingredients, and some of the ingredients we can't even pronounce. So it's for the sake of everyone's well-being we're doing this. And I felt it was important for Yoppie to be committing to provide a sustainable option, a more healthier products that are kind to the planet too. And if we speak just about menstruation and menstrual hygiene, it's emerging as one of the pivotal issues for gender equality. And it's also part now of human rights and the development. And UNICEF estimates that 1 in 10 girls in Africa avoid school during the periods. And we see this not just happening in developing countries, we also see this happening in UK, in France, in Sweden. And when girls don't end up going to school, they end up leaving the education altogether, which is really bad for continued sustainable development goals.
So Daniela, you started telling us a bit about your company, Yoppie, already. Can you tell us a bit about that journey from the very beginning and what the company has become now?
Yes, so Yoppie is today a healthcare technology company with a mission, as you said, to put women's health into women's hands. And we're starting with toxin-free feminine care. So in summary, we are natural, biodegradable, organic cotton menstrual product brand, but we have a bigger mission that spans much more than this. I've always loved the phrase, no one is you, and that is your power. And that is very much the ethos of our brand and ingrained in our brand today. So we inspire all women to embrace individuality, because I think we have been treated as one size fits all. The product has been packaged in a way that we can't read the ingredients list. There's no personalization to the whole experience, yet the menstrual cycle is so unique to a woman's body. And we even speak about it as our fifth sign, but it hasn't been treated like that. So from the very beginning, we worked very hard by, as I said, creating a product line that is completely free from plastics, completely free from toxin, chlorine, dyes, fragrances, that makes the pads and liners and tampons completely natural, biodegradable, and so they are super gentle to your skin, to your body, but also our planet, which is super important because, as we know, half of the population of our global planet is menstruating at some point. We chose to use organic cotton because it's much more safer, it's more natural, it's eco-friendly, and it doesn't pollute the environment, which is great. And the idea behind Yoppie came along and was already born back in 2016. So I've been doing it for a while now. It was actually me and my friend. We realized that most of the menstrual hygiene brands that we have used since our first period, like all the pads, tampons, and liners from the bigger brands, contained materials that are proven not to be healthy. But no one had actually told us about them, which we were kind of like, this is a very strange introduction experience to your periods. When you got your period for the first time, you were just given a set of products and your mom kind of told you you're grown up now. So we decided to change that. We developed our first organic cotton tampon. We made a basic website, and we started selling subscriptions, on tampon subscriptions, because that was the second realization, that we never had period products at home or handy when we got our periods, yet In many cases, periods are a regular thing. It comes, on a monthly cadence. So we saw that as a great opportunity to build a tailored subscription for women. So we launched something called Your Happy Period back in 2016. And since then, I've been just, pivoting, developing the brand. We then launched brand Yoppie under the slogan Your Happy Period, because we realized that was a really bad brand name. And since then I've been learning as what it takes to be an entrepreneur, developing, the platform, the product line. Back in 2018, I raised my first family and friends round, which I used to develop our product line even more. So we developed pad and liners. I then got pregnant. That took a bit of a break because I was a single founder and it was a bit too much to handle. But then in 2019, I secured our first external VC funding, which was amazing. And it gave me the opportunity to hire people, bring great individuals into our vision and help me make Yoppie to what it is today, a technology company where we personalize the whole menstrual health and intimate well-being for women. And last week we launched our new platform, which is super exciting to see that come to life, because I've been, on a simple website for the past 4 years. And we hope that will be a place for women or any person who menstruates to manage their personalized menstrual health, but also learning about topics they maybe feel ashamed about asking about, or even feel comfortable asking their GP.
Yeah, that's a long journey, but very good one in the end with now launching your new platform. I think that's great. And thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. And it's also probably just started. I feel like every year, okay, we start every year or every quarter. You're like, okay, this is a new pace, this is a new phase. So it's a long, long way to go still.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were kind of mentioning in terms of your external VC funding, but according to Forbes, only 10% of global investment goes to female-led startups. But DataBridge, a research firm, predicts that by 2026, femtech could raise up to $41 billion in sales. So do you think this is a step in the right direction, or do we have a long way to go?
Oh, definitely. I believe, the femtech space and the femtech journey is still at the very, very, very start. We think there is so much more than just, femtech as, the uterus. Femtech is beyond the uterus, which is kind of exciting. You start to thinking about things that are not around the reproductive health, etc. Because we've been seeing for the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen a heavy focus on the female uterus. And that, yet again, demonstrates actually how little of the market we actually started investing in. From an industry-wide, VC perspective, we've also seen now during Corona that investors are doubling down on their current existing portfolio companies, meaning it might be a bit harder to get new companies, like new ideas, new visions to raise funding. However, I do believe that, great teams with the right vision, with a good plan for execution, will be able to find funding. I know for a fact, because I've been out there this summer raising, female founders are a hot topic. People want to back female founders. People love femtech, female-oriented solutions, because it's been underserved for so many decades. So there is an appetite for it. And I think if you have an idea, you should just go out there, network, learn about the funding landscape. There's so many different types of funding you could get. Me and Nova, we started with an incubator loan back in Sweden 4 years ago that made it possible for us to buy our first, order stock and build our first website and invest in the first packaging. I then, when I took Yoppie a bit further, I then reached out to my family and friends under SEIS, which is a very good tax benefit for people in the UK to actually invest in startups. I know, crowdfunding is a very good way of both marketing your product, but also raise funding. And then network, research, network, learn the space, look at, similar brands, similar companies, the journey they have done, and learn. And I always say this to everyone that I meet, to everyone that I'm sharing my journey, like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And it's just about, it's super cliche, but it's just about doing it. And, for some people, because they've done it before, it will take probably just a couple of months, couple of years. And for some people, it would just mean it takes a bit longer, because then you might need to research, might need to fail, might to, rewrite that pitch deck, rewrite that business plan several times because you've never done it. A second tip is, don't be afraid of sharing your idea with friends, with people, with anyone you meet, because that feedback, I believe in law of attraction. Like, the more you put it out in the universe, the more you speak about it, the more energy, the more things you will attract back, which is super amazing. And if you have an idea that is like big enough, the market is huge, because not all ideas are, VC friendly, if that makes sense. Not all ideas should be invested by a VC. Maybe your idea is, doesn't require that much funding. Maybe you can make a loan. Maybe you reach profitability much quicker. And then the exciting part is, like, then you want to own as much equity as possible. So, yeah. And there's, tons of resources on this. I love Y Combinator in US. They have a lot of blog posts about this. So yeah, the resources are out there. It's just up for grabs. And that means the competition is a bit bigger, because everyone can do it. But it's that's the beauty of the internet and, sharing content and resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot out there. You can learn a lot on the internet, which is great. It's a great thing that we have that.
Yeah. And also inspired. I remember, when started Yoppie, I never even thought it would be possible for me to raise funding. Then you listen to these podcasts, you listen to these different founder stories. You start like playing with the thought, but like, why can't I do that? And you just do it. And if I would share my first ever, what I thought was a perfect pitch deck, people would probably laugh and be like, how is this even possible? I think you need to put your like ego and being open to, being critiqued, being open to like feedback, and try not to like define that as you. It's kind of like just an outlet of you that you can become better at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Just before we continue, I want to remind everyone that we have the Q&A box right at the bottom of your screens. And so please add any questions or comments or thoughts as we go through, and then we can get to them at the end, towards the end of the broadcast. But yes, going back to you, Daniela, why do you think diversity continues to be an uphill battle for organizations, particularly in tech?
I think it's super, super important. So if we're coming back to Yoppie, so for example, for us, Yoppie is like an outlook. It's like a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's not just about our products. And because we care for all people menstruating, and then we think long-term, and then that needs to be relevant internally in our organizations too. And because we try to push and set new standards in an industry that hasn't been challenged for so many years, I believe you do that with a mix of people. You do that by, inviting different thoughts, different ideas to a discussion, where you have an open mindset, you don't judge, and because I think individuality brings greatness, and it's the same thing, it's just luckily falls like that, but we believe that our product, as the more personalized our product gets, the better it will be for our consumers. And it's the same thing. Our product can't become as personalized as possible if we don't bring diversity into our culture and into our team. And yeah, so we really put thought into that when hiring now, and we're still a very small team, but I think it's important to discuss it at an early stage in the company. And coming back to diversity, we try to hire both men and women, obviously, fathers and mothers, younger and older, different backgrounds. We're really open. We really try to think outside the box of the people we're bringing in.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of reflect that in the way your products are made, is by having a really diverse team of ideas, because that's the only way that different types of people are going to buy your products, I think.
Yes, and I also think it's we want to build a team or a culture where you should feel free to speak up about an idea of a challenge, or we're championing different opinions, and we're championing internal discussions, which I'm super proud of, and that means inclusivity. How do we discuss a topic that has two sides to it? We made a decision, for example, recently to stop calling our blog for FemLife because that was not inclusive, and we rebranded it or put a new name to it called Full Stop, because to us, because we're thinking long term, and even now, we want to be relevant for the next generation of people who menstruate, and if that is a woman or non-conforming customer, gender non-conforming customers, we should be there. We are there for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I mean, those discussions were interesting to have internally, because it doesn't mean everyone agrees with it, but it's about finding that path that everyone believes in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just kind of going from that in the way that you run your organization internally. So how do you bring that human element into Yoppie in terms of your policies for flexible working and stuff like that? So, and where do those come from?
So I think it starts probably normally, not normally, but from the founder or the core team. To me, it's always been very important with values and how we operate as people. It sounds super ridiculous, but that was the first thing when I got the funding and actually going to scale out the company from my kitchen table actually into an office with other teammates. That was the first document I've ever written. It was the values. And it's the same document I'm rewriting again when we're now closing our second funding and going to bring out and going to extend the team even more this year. Again, we're coming back to our values and our culture, and I know how I've structured it is that our culture is based on the people. It's based on you who joining Yoppie. It's not going to be based on me telling you what to do or how to act. We want to create something sustainable, and therefore the culture is super important for that. Coming back, if you want to create a sustainable work environment for mothers, fathers, or anyone, I think flexible working hours is super important. We do function differently during different hours. We have different, obligations with kids and other things. So I think having a flexible working schedule is a no-brainer to us. It also opens up the possibility to hire people if you do fully remote. And this has also been fast-tracked with Corona. It's been proven that people work really well But again, we miss the human element of seeing each other, brainstorming each other. So I think from our end at Yoppie, we will probably go fully remote, but we will interact and try to see each other on a regular basis, and then have, in-depth workshops, collaborate, brainstorm together in person, but then we go back home and work on our projects. And yeah, the culture is about the people. It's the people who should inspire each other to become better. It's the team that sets the path on where the brand is going. And I think as humans, we can always grow personally and commercially. And combining those two is really powerful. So when you see a teammate like professionally grow or even personally grow on the things they're weak on, and especially, like, I can only speak for myself. To me, speaking like this has been a couple of years ago a no-go zone. But I'm pushing myself. I'm being encouraged by my teammates to try and learn, and they're there if I fail. So
yeah. That's, yeah. No, it's good. I think it's definitely super important to have that element of like understanding within your team that everything is flexible and all that. In terms of as I touched on before, that statistics from Forbes, can you tell us a little bit more about your investor journey with Yoppie and how did that come about?
Yes, so I've, as I said, me and Nova, for the first iterations, and this is how I think anyone who has an idea or thinking of starting a company, I think they should read a really good book called The Lean Startup. Super cliche, but it's actually so good, and that's why I think it's becoming a cliche to read the book. But it's about creating a minimum viable product. So you test an assumption, you test a minimum viable product of what you want to solve. And you just kind of break it down. So let's say you have this big vision of, creating Uber, for example. Okay, but what can you do to prove the points of becoming the Uber, for example? Could you build a waiting list for car sharing where you just disclose what you're going to do and see if people get interest in that? And you kind of do it step by step. So that's what kind of I've been doing all these years. I kind of have this northern star of what I think, this could look in a successful setup, meaning, we get funding, we get customers, we grow, we get good products. If all the things align that needs to be aligned in the business, what could this end up being? And I've always dreamed about, because periods are so much more than just a tamp on a pad. To me, that Northern Star have always been a united platform where you can manage products, information, your doctor, your test. Is kind of like this whole lifestyle in a single place. But obviously, I didn't start at that stage. To me, it was easier to start with a single tampon subscription. So we looked at funding that was kind of cheap funding with low risk. So in Sweden, they have incubator finance where you lend money to your company, but you are just personally obliged to pay back 10% if you fail. And I'm 100% sure that there are equivalent setups in the UK for this type of funding. And then, family and friends will most likely give you some funding to test your idea. Crowdfunding, angels. I mean, there are so many angels. There are so many ex-entrepreneurs who want to help entrepreneurs succeed in their journey. And then you have VC, venture capital funding, that I believe come at a later stage or comes if the market is big enough for them, because they obviously looking for a return. So not all ideas are suitable for a venture capital firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. But
personally, it's been an amazing journey raising funding, but also very, very, very hard. It's you really need to put yourself out there. You need to it's like this summer I sounded like a broken record, and you're pitching and speaking about the same thing 100 times. You're selling the vision, you're selling the product. You might selling something that is a bit flawed, because that's how it is sometimes. You have bugs, you have things you need to prove, you have proof points that you still haven't 100% proved, but you still need to be so certain that this will work. And that is hard. And you will have days when you're like, oh my God, will this even work? No one is believing in me. But you need to look at that Northern Star and just keep pushing.
Yeah, definitely. It'll pay off in the end, as proven by your success.
Yeah, and if we look at Yoppie, we're not even, we're raising our first seed round. Hopefully it will close within, days. But still, it doesn't mean we will succeed. It doesn't mean we will, reach a profit, like $100 billion profitable company. It just helps. It enables us to continue on our path to where we want to come. And if Yoppie wouldn't succeed, that doesn't define me as a person, which has been taking me, a long time to realize. Before, the first years of Yoppie, it was like if someone commented on the color or on the slogan, it was like I got so offended and I felt so bad, and how could I make up that slogan, or how could I choose brand color? And it takes time, and that's why I think you should fail. I don't wish anyone to fail, but from failure comes new ideas. You learn from mistakes. Super cliche, but that's how it works. And every time when I have a hard thing or something not coming my way, I had a mentor a couple of years ago who said, it's for your narrative. Remember, when you are on that big stage, remember, for example, as I do today, you sharing your story. I need to have those things to share. Otherwise, my journey is very boring to listen to. So everything when I have a big obstacle or something doesn't go my way, or I always just in my mind, okay, this is for my narrative. Your book or something.
Definitely. I'm just going to pass over back to Shama now, who will go through some last few questions before we wrap up. Shama?
Thanks, Louisa. Just while we, if there are any Q&As that are going to be coming in, I just encourage everyone listening, if you have any questions, do just put them in that Q&A box. But while we are waiting for those Q&As, Daniela, one thing that struck me as you were talking was just that the values that you set out at the very beginning. And I'm curious, as you are growing your business and you're getting more people involved in the company, how can you make sure that that culture grows with the organization?
So first of all, I think what many companies fail to do is actually communicate what are the values, where can I find the values, and you do that when onboarding a teammate. And I think it's in this case it's going to be up to me, so I'm the one making sure when we onboard new people, how do we introduce them to our vision, to myself, to the team. And that whole thing is kind of a product of itself, the bigger you get, which I'm super excited about. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be in charge of our kickoffs and how the workshops we're running. And it's actually a function. So if you are a value-driven, purpose-driven company, I think people should have their own function. So we at a very early stage at Yoppie, we take pride in working with HR. I think some companies actually hate HR and oh, is that necessary? But we believe that is how you build a team long term. We want them to feel safe. We're super transparent with the team. I've been, sharing my funding update the whole summer to the team. We're super transparent on when the funding ends, when there is no money left in the bank account, because one of our values is integrity, and integrity only comes on 100% trust. So it's like a dual relationship. So if you want a team to trust you, you need to trust your team, vice versa. And coming back to the question, I think if the values are not clear, they're not communicated, but also revisit it. Like, you need to revisit your values. I believe first stage of a company, you might have, we have passion, for example, passion and care and goal hunter. Maybe that look differently when we are a scale up, when we have, 200 people. And that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to change your values in terms of where the business is, but make sure to own them.
Definitely. Well, sadly, I think that's all we have time for this morning. Daniela, thank you so much for sharing all of those thoughts. I hope that everyone listening has found it really helpful to hear more about the human element and how that manifests at Yoppie. So Daniela, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.